can't think about Savannah and its progress without thinking about the influence of Bob James all over the place.
Being a pathfinder and knowing where you're going and being a bridge builder and being able to meet in the middle was a unique skill set that Bob brought to Savannah in a time where we needed Bob James.
You know, he's got 50 years. he's got 50 years of leadership in this town, leading a very well-respected financial institution.
As a no-nonsense person that may perpetrate that he doesn't care sometimes, but he will take and give you the money out of his pocket.
There was one moment that has always resonated with me, and that is my husband, Frederick Gregory, also was born and raised here in Savannah. We had very different lives growing up. He asked me to Savannah High's prom. You know, before prom you go and you visit family members and stuff and they all take pictures. So we went to his aunt's house. When he introduced me, she said, "I know who you are. You're Bob James's daughter." And she told me this story about how when she first moved to Savannah, and as a Black woman at the time, she couldn't get a loan. She had no credit history and she couldn't walk into any, majority bank and get a loan. And so she personally came to see my dad, and he said to her, "I'll let you establish credit here. I'm gonna lend you $50. If you can bring this money back to me, you will then have established credit with the bank and I'll give you a loan." And because of that, the house that she was in, that we were visiting, they were able to buy that house because my dad gave her that chance to establish credit. So they were able to get a house, they were able to get a car. And they wouldn't have been able to do that if Carver State Bank hadn't have been here and if my dad hadn't, trusted her. For no reason than to just trust her and to give her that chance.
When you look back at successful people, they see us now, but they don't know the backstory.
My dad is Robert E. James. Robert E. James Sr. now. We have to distinguish between him and me. And he was born in Hattiesburg, Mississippi in 1946.
My parents knew how to make things work. My mother became a beautician and my father worked for a company called Dixie Pine. He smelled like turpentine all the time. There were 5 boys and 1 girl in our family. My mother and father were convinced that if we were going to get out of poverty, that the way to do it is through education.
Here are all these boys and 1 girl, but all of them, most of them are college graduates.
My mother and father were very much involved in community life in Hattiesburg. My mother, for example, would have been president of the high school PTA for maybe 8-10 straight years.
She was also a leader in the local civil rights movement.
The landmark lawsuit that was filed in Forrest County to give African Americans the right to vote, in that was, my mother was a named plaintiff, and so was my older 2 brothers.
My grandmother had hosted Freedom Riders that came down from the north to help Blacks in the South get the opportunity and the right to vote.
So we had all of these young white people from New England and from Illinois and stuff, sleeping in our living room.
When you look back at African American families, for the most part, they all had big dreams for their children.
I can't remember a time in my life, going back to maybe the 8th grade, when I wasn't president of something. I was president either of my class, or I was president of something at the church.
He excelled as a leader in the African Methodist Episcopal Church, the AME Church, and he was elected president of the statewide Young People's Division and was elected Boy of the Year. And so because of that, he was awarded a scholarship to attend Morris Brown College.
When Bob was at Morris Brown, he met Shirley, who was at Spelman College.
Bob did like a lot of us, and he married way over his head. And so if you don't know about Shirley, you don't know about Bob.
They demonstrate and exhibit the kind of love and compassion that should be in every American family. But when you look at what's happening within the black community, when you look at poverty, you look at crime, you know, we need to have positive role models. And Bob and Shirley James and their family represented that.
Both of them are very, very, very involved in the AME Church.
And the two of them, they've got their own things that they work on, but they both help and support each other. So you can always count on, when you're dealing with Bob or Shirley, you're getting the whole team.
Part of their philosophy, I think, of going above and beyond is to do that in your own life and in the way that you live your life and take risks.
I had to pick a graduate school to apply to, and I had heard that Harvard Business School was the best business school. So I applied to Harvard Business School.
Large Ivy League schools in the North were looking to essentially diversify.
And a few weeks later, I did get an acceptance letter from Harvard Business School, and at that point is when I found out how difficult it was to get into the Harvard Business School.
My mom also got her degree from Harvard. She got a graduate degree in education, a master's in education, while she was at Harvard with my dad.
I never stopped being the black person from Hattiesburg, Mississippi when I was at Harvard, and that made me totally different from everybody else in that class. There was nobody in that class who had ever picked any cotton but me. You know, there was some people who owned some cotton fields, but there was nobody who had ever picked any cotton, really picked any cotton and needed to pick cotton to have clothes to go to school, new clothes to go to school, other than me.
A lot of folks from Savannah and Georgia will know the name C&S Bank, Citizens and Southern Bank.
When I first moved to Atlanta to work for C&S Bank, I did not think that they were going to make me president. So when the opportunity came to be president of a bank, I took a small salary cut and took the job here.
C&S Bank was run by a man named Mills B. Lane, who was a local from Savannah.
He told me, he said, well, he would say Robert. He said, Robert, I don't know if that's a good idea. You know, that bank is about $4 million in size. You go down there, you make a bad loan, you'll sink the whole bank. You can stay up here, you can make a bad loan, we just write it off, you know.
And so one of his first major projects was to develop a new headquarters for the bank, which was on the very site that we sit in today.
We have expansion plans that will take us into other parts of the city in the next few years, and this is just our beginning.
If you look at what we do at Carver State Bank, our mission is to provide the building blocks to financial freedom.
People who were unbanked, who had no relationships with banks, were encouraged to get a checking account, open a savings account.
Carver Bank was the first bank that started classes in becoming first-time homeowners.
He uses that platform to continue to do the great work to address economic mobility for those, especially those in the black community.
People wonder, why could we maintain our independence and be successful and get through recessions and so forth? And I think it has to do with the fact that we've had consistency of leadership. You know, I came here when I was 24 years old, and I was elected president of this bank when I was 24 years old, and I decided to stay here.
I'm the chairman of the board of the National Bankers Association, which is one of the great honors of my life to be, and it's because my dad was two-time chairman.
The National Bankers Association was the first national organization led by African Americans to have an audience with the president after Jimmy Carter's election. I arranged that meeting. The first 10 to 15 minutes of it was just me and Jimmy Carter talking. We talked about Savannah, we talked about Georgia.
I think Bob is recognized so much politically because of his honesty, his kindness.
He's helped so many people get into political office. And you know what he asked? Zero. He asks for nothing in return. Here's what he does. There's some fine writing down there. He says, look, what I want you to do is help this community move forward.
If you look at what he's done from a civic perspective, whether it is serving on the Savannah Economic Development Authority Board or
St. Joseph Hospital Board, he doesn't talk about those things.
He's a quiet guy, so a lot of times you'll be in a meeting with him and everybody's going and talking and worried about the world coming to an end, and Bob's just kind of sitting back listening, and then there'll be a moment of silence and the voice will come out and Bob will pretty much size up the whole situation, and everybody will be like, yeah, that's what we want to do.
Oh goodness, the Tribune.
I always wanted to own a newspaper.
The Savannah Tribune was founded basically in the Reconstruction era.
I just fell in love with it. It looked like a Wall Street Journal type newspaper.
It was the voice of the African American community. It went dormant.
I contacted the last owner and asked them if they would either sell me the right to the newspaper or if there would be any kind of infringement. And they never responded. So I got a legal opinion as to whether I could use the name, and it looked like I could use it.
It was good to see the Tribune come back after so many years.
Then it looked like the newspaper was going to be very successful. And so I was sued, and it went all the way to state Supreme Court, and we actually won the lawsuit, which means that the state Supreme Court of Georgia awarded us all of the history of the Savannah Tribune.
With him having the responsibilities of the bank, Shirley was the perfect person to become the editor and the publisher.
We are one of the oldest African American owned newspapers in the country.
I think Bob is largely successful because he's not really focused on success as an end. He's focused on excellence, and he's focused on the journey of getting to success by doing all the right things with the right people at the right time.
Bob, in so many ways, represents the kind of values that Gene Gadsden talked about. The value of making sure that you remember that your name is all that you have.
In the Savannah Chatham community for African Americans, there are some that are called to fill a void. When W.W. Law passed, someone had to step up. To me, Bob James was our W.W. Law.
And it's interesting that coming from Hattiesburg, Mississippi, a town of less than 50,000, growing up in a Jim Crow era, in a racist state, that he has emerged as a national leader, respected by people of all colors, all races and classes, to be the person that he is. That is a testament to the strength and durability of a person who was never told that they could be less than all that they could be. And I take my hats off to him.
Robert James is a laureate in the Junior Achievement Savannah Business Hall of Fame.